ओके ठीक है। Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the editorial discussion. This is Preeti Sagar, and I'm going to discuss all such important editorials which were there in the news in the last week. So let's start the discussion. The first article, that is about yesterday's article which published in The Hindu. This is regarding Delhi's legislative assembly issue, or you can say the issue which is related to the power and power sharing between Delhi government and lieutenant governor. So article is about, that is, Delhi undermined bill to amend GNCTD Act is a rollback of the notion of representative government. Basically, what is happening, this tussle between Delhi government and lieutenant governor, this is not new. This is in the discussion since 2-3 years, and before that, in fact, some issues has been arised. So this is regarding power sharing and the power of Delhi in the hands of whether it should go in the hands of governor, that is lieutenant governor, or to the Delhi Assembly, okay, or you can say the Delhi government, which is elected by the people. So Delhi, that is and UT, Union Territory, and it is NCT, National Capital Territory of India, and National Capital Territory of Delhi. So this NCT, and it is and Union Territory, and it is having direct control of central government through lieutenant governor. So here what happens, the issue arises between the government which has been elected directly by the people, because there are two union territories which have legislative assemblies, that is Delhi and Puducherry. So these two union territories, these are having representative of people which are directly elected by them. So here issue arises between the elected government, that is the government of Delhi, and lieutenant governor, because this is an UT. So in UT, governor would not be here, rather lieutenant governor would be appointed by central government. So here central government have its hold on the name of lieutenant governor. Delhi is important. Why? Because it is a political capital of India, and here uh, um, uh, all such transactions of the government which goes on, so issues arises on that. So there are two articles which has been given in the constitution, that is article 239 and 239AA. So these two articles, basically these are bone of contention, which are you can say there are some contradictions on the meaning which has been established by these two articles. So what is the issue behind that? Issue is there, as I've said, the issue is regarding power sharing between governor or lieutenant governor and Delhi government. New amendments has been taken, and why these new amendments are bone of contention, we'll discuss about that. So this is a government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act. Okay, so the context is about center's bill seeking to amend the law that relating to the running of National Capital Territory of Delhi, claims that it is aimed at giving effect to the interpretation given by the Supreme Court judgments on the Delhi governance structure. So this Supreme Court's judgment on Delhi government structure that came in 2018, when there was a tussle between Delhi government and lieutenant governor, where whatever important issues which Delhi Assembly has been passed, that has been reserved by the governor for the recommendation, or for the recommendation given to the center. So here this bill has been reserved so that it can be transferred to the central government or the parliament for its discussion. So here Supreme Court has said in 2018 that it is the power to lieutenant governor is having, that it can refer any of the matter to the central government, but that any doesn't mean every matter. Okay, so any doesn't mean every matter, because it was happening, whatever Delhi Assembly used to be used to pass bill, that has been reserved by the governor for further discussion in the parliament. So on that, Supreme Court has said that this is in this regard that any matter can be reserved by the Lieutenant Governor, but any doesn't mean every matter. Okay, so that was its judgment, Supreme Court's judgment on this. So proposed changes in the new GNCTD Act, that is Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act. So new proposed changes are very antithesis of what the court has said. So court has said that reserving of matter is required, but not every matter. Okay, so against of this antithesis has been raised, or you can say raised, with the help of new amendments in the bill. So the bill that has become, if it becomes, or it appears as a law, then it will wholly undermine the court's efforts to strengthen the elected government vis-a-vis the appointed lieutenant governor. Constitution bench verdict of June 4, 2018 has said that lieutenant governor has not been entrusted with any independent decision making power. Why? Because Delhi lieutenant governor is not an elected one, but it is an appointed one. This office is an appointed office, and the appointment of this post is being done by the president. Okay, but here you can see it is done by the president, but on the aid and advice of the council of ministers. So indirectly, whose control on lieutenant governor would be? That would be of the government, which is functioning in the central government. Okay, which is functioning at the center. Okay, so indirectly it becomes an agent of it is said that a governor is the agent, or lieutenant governor is the agent of president, but indirectly it becomes agent of the central government or prime minister. Okay, prime minister along with council of minister, then you can say that it becomes an agent of central government. So here Supreme Court has said that LG has not entrusted with any independent decision making power. It means if it has been presented any bill of the assembly, then he has to give his assent. But if it is reserving that bill, or if he wants to, or this office wants to take decision on any of the matters, so it cannot be. Why? Because he is not the authority, the final ultimate authority. Final authority hai, but ultimate authority nahi hai. Okay, so in that case, what Supreme Court has said, that it is not any independent decision making power. It does not entrust any independent decision making power. So he has to either act on the aid and advice of the council of ministers, or he is bound to implement the decision taken by the president on a reference being made by him. Okay, so independent decision making would not be there. This is unconstitutional. Rather, whether he has to act according to aid and advice of the council of minister, or he is bound to implement decision taken by the president. So whatever decision has been taken by the president, then he is bound to implement that. Okay, so aid and advice clause pertains only to the matters on which elected assembly has powers under state and concurrent list. It means only on those matters he can take council of ministers aid and advice, if that matters related, or that matter falls under state or concurrent list. So only on that matters he is bound to take aid and advice of the council of ministers. But with the exception of public order, police and land, and wherever there are differences between LG and the elected governor, former should refer the question to the president. So here it has said that except state and concurrent list matters, if any matters related to public order, police and land, or if any difference of opinion arises between lieutenant governor and elected government, it means Delhi government, then what happens? Lieutenant governor can refer that matter to the president. Okay, so court was at pains to clarify that the power to refer any matter to president did not mean that every matter should be referred. Okay, so here it has said that here any matter does not mean every matter, because it was happening. All such matters Delhi government used to take up, that has to be go to the lieutenant governor for his assent. But it was raised questions, and difference of opinion has been there. Okay, so in that case, what LG used to do, LG used to refer that matter to the president. Okay, in the name of difference of opinion between Delhi government and Lieutenant Governor. Okay, so in that sense, Supreme Court has said that here any matter does not mean every matter. So guiding principle was that the elected government should not be undermined by the unelected administrator. This is unconstitutional if, because this Lieutenant Governor office, that is what, that is an unelected administrator. Basically, union territories, these are being governed by administrator appointed by president. But here, in case of union territories having legislative assemblies, so here governor would not be there, but lieutenant governor would be there, appointed by the president. And if any difference of opinion arises, and here government that is elected, directly elected by the people. Okay, so guiding principle says that elected government should not undermine by the unelected administrator. Okay, so bill introduced in the Lok Sabha does violate this interpretation. So here some tussles are there on the bill which has been presented in the Lok Sabha, and it goes against the constitutional norms. So bill seeks to declare that in the context of legislation passed by the Delhi Assembly, all references to the government would mean lieutenant governor. Okay, here it is saying that all the references, these are not to the government which is working at the Delhi, but it would mean what? It would mean lieutenant governor. So that would be on the name of lieutenant governor. That has been, this provision has been given in the bill, the amendment. So bill seeks to declare in the context of legislation passed by Delhi Assembly. Whatever legislation would be passed by Delhi Assembly, it would not be on the name of government, but it would be on the name of lieutenant governor. Indeed, Delhi is an UT, but it is somewhat incongruous for a territory with an elected house of to be declared the sole domain of the LG. It is an UT, but here elected government works. People directly elect their government. So Apex Court had rightly concluded that the scheme set out in the Constitution and the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act 1991 envisages a collaborative structure that can be worked only through constitutional trust. It means if whatever functions has been allotted, has been given to perform by the lieutenant governor, that he has to do, and whatever the functions has to perform by the government, that they have to do. Okay, so that has been envisaged in the Constitution of India. Proviso of Article 239 clause double A. Okay, so this article along with double A clause, that basically arises these kind of tussles. So that empowers lieutenant governor to refer a difference of opinion with the Council of Ministers to the president. But it does not mean that administrator is given an opportunity to come up with the difference of opinion on every decision made by the ministry. Okay, Article 239 AA, it says that if it gives power to the LG or the lieutenant governor, that on the name of difference of opinion, it can refer that matter to the president. Okay, but here what happens? Here it doesn't mean that lieutenant governor would make that matter into as an opportunity, and it will refer all such matters to the president. Okay, on the name of difference of opinion. Yet it is precisely what the bill proposes to do. Okay, so and it is quite incongruous that instead of Parliament identifying the matters on which LG's opinion should be sought, bill proposes that LG himself would specify such matters. Now here, the biggest question is, or biggest problem in this bill is the provision that it says that whatever the matter would be on which difference of opinion arises, that would be decided by the lieutenant governor. Okay, clause that declares void any rule that empowers assembly or its committees to discuss any matter of day-to-day administration or conduct inquiries amounts to a rollback of representative government. So here, this clause has declared void. Okay, clause that declares void any rule that empowers the assembly. It means if any rule has been passed by the assembly or empowers the assembly, that can be declared void, और its committees, मतलब assembly या committee के से कोई भी अगर whatever rule has been passed, whatever law has been passed, so it can be declared void to discuss any matter of day-to-day administration or conduct inquiries amount to a rollback of representative government. So if such a law made by the government, if it is being declared as void, or any inquiry is being conducted against government. So what it will be? It will be a rollback for the rollback of the representative government. So union territory concept is one of the many ways in which India regulates relation between center and its unit, and it should not be used to subvert the basis of electoral democracy. So here, if two union territories are given status of having or keeping legislative assemblies, and if such kind of tussles would arise between lieutenant governor or government of legislative assembly, so it is against the constitutional norms. Okay, so it should not be used to subvert the basis of electoral democracy. So it means it will hamper electoral democracy in the region. For example, if in Delhi it is happening, so it is hampering the basis of electoral democracy, which is one of the basic structures. Democracy is one of the basic structures. So here it should be keep in mind. And LG is an office which is an unelected authority. Okay, that is an unelected authority. So they should not have ultimate power to decide any matter. It will give them ultimate power to do that. And if it will happen, then it will against the constitution or constitutional norm, and that will be a danger to the basis of electoral democracy. Okay, so this is all about this article. Now, moving on to the next one. This is related to Quad Summit. Two articles are there in this discussion regarding Quad Summit, and different angles are being discussed. So, this article is about the message in Alaska from Washington to Beijing. Quad membership or Quad partnership could mount a counter challenge to China, but India's step will need to be more nuanced. Okay, so here everybody, the world is looking before or looking to India, what India is going to do and what India is doing against China or to counter China. Here it is remarkable that USA has taken interest, and its keen interest is seen in Quad Summit. And that is why after assuming office, the new president has shown its interest, and this Quad meeting has held recently. So context of this article is that a week after the first leader summit of quadrilateral framework that was held on 12th March, the message of the virtual meeting between leaders of Australia, India, Japan, and USA that was delivered directly to Beijing, that is China, as US Secretary of State and Chinese Communist Party Politburo member and director of the Central Foreign Affairs Commission office, accompanied by US National Security Advisor and Chinese Foreign Minister and State Councilor. They met in Anchorage, Alaska. Okay, so after this meeting, what happens? Chinese officials, they met with the US officials in Alaska. So some issues has been discussed. So message was broadly a three-pronged one, that under the new US president, America is back in terms of its desire to play a leading role in the other regions, and that it views China as its primary challenger for that leadership, and that Quad partnership is ready to mount a counter challenge, albeit in the soft power terms at present, and in order to do so. So here it is saying that under new president, it is the situation of America is like America is back. Where it is back? It is back on the front, where it can show its leadership to the world. Okay, and along with Quad members, what it is trying to show, it is trying to show that together they have this power that they can counter challenge, or they can become a counter challenge to China. Okay, so in the Quad's joint statement, it's first and in the joint editorial by US President and Prime Minister of India, Scott Morrison, and Prime Minister of India, Australia, and Japan, direct mentions of China may have been absent, but senior officials have made it clear that they were not overlooked in the conversation. It means directly they did not discuss about China. On the name of China, nothing has been discussed, but their discussions, but their actions, that has reflected that they have this intention, and they are now going to counter China. Okay, so briefing the media about Quad Summit, it has been said that Quad partners has raised their issues with China, including Chinese coercion of Australia, their harassment around Senkaku Islands, their aggression on the border with India, which were then taken up during the talks with Mr. Wang and Mr. Yang. Okay, so it has been in the Quad summit. It has been discussed what China has done with all the four partners. So the fact that the talks in Alaska were prefaced by the Quad summit, as well as visits to Tokyo and Seoul by US officials, and also a visit to Canberra by US Indo Pacific coordinator um, uh, uh, Carl Campbell, and the part of concerted message from Washington to Beijing. So, whatever in the Quad summit has been discussed, that this preface has been discussed in Alaska, okay, regarding its USA's membership in the Quad, regarding USA's actions from Washington to Beijing. What it means, what USA is now going to do. Okay, so for both Japan and Australia, they are that are military allies of US as per the 2016 treaty or military pact between USA, Japan, and Australia. So they are what? They are military allies and completely aligned to Indo-Pacific policy. So the outcomes of the summit, both in terms of three C's working groups that is established on COVID-19 vaccines, climate change, and critical technology. So these are those three C's on which the summit has taken a decision. Okay, so three C's working group would be there. First is COVID-19 vaccination for this, and climate change and climate critical technology. And in terms of this message to the fourth C is what? China are very welcome. It means they have taken up the vision. They have this vision to work on three C's, that is COVID-19 vaccination, climate change, and critical technology. And another C, that is fourth C, called China. It has not been discussed, but if it would be a matter, then it is very much welcomed by the members. So for India, whatever the outcomes would of Squad Summit would be, that need more nuanced analysis. It means whatever the outcomes of Quad Summit are for India, it should be more analyzed. Okay. On the three C's working groups, it is clear that India is on board, but with some riders. It means what? It means India has given a target to produce or manufacture 1 billion vaccine, okay, COVID-19 vaccines by 2022, and it will be supported by USA, Japan, and Australia in terms of funding, management, okay, and distribution, and providing logistics as well. So vaccine initiative is a major boost for India's pharmaceutical prowess, which has already been proven during the current pandemic. India is not only the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines by number of doses produced and sold globally, it has already exported 58 million doses to nearly 71 countries worldwide as commercial shipments, grants, and those funded by Gavi COVAX initiative. It means India has become one of the biggest manufacturer of vaccines, and it has also exported vaccines to 71 countries, manufacturing a billion doses for Southeast Asia under Quad, over and above its current international commitments, as well domestic goals to vaccinate 300 million people as originally planned by September. That will require a major ramp up in capacity and funding, and it will be a testimony to the power of Quad cooperation. So, whatever the effort could have been made much easier had India's Quad partners also announced dropping their opposition to India's plea at the World Trade Organization, which it filed along with South Africa in October 2020, seeking waiver from certain provisions of agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights for the prevention, containment, and treatment of COVID-19. So India became one of the first propounder of canceling these trips from the distribution of medicine or the COVID-19 vaccination so that it can be reached to all such people of the world. So it is surprising that summit did not seek to bridge differences over this issue. It has seen 8 factious rounds of talks in Geneva, with the next round expected in June 2021, when the leaders discussed how to increase India's production capabilities. So here it is in the discussion if India has given a target to distribute vaccines after production or manufacturing, then it is also required how to produce such or production capabilities need to be improved. So, on climate change, India has welcomed the return of the USA to the Paris Accord. It means under Trump regime, USA backed out from the Paris Accord, but under new president, USA has returned to it. So, on climate change, India has welcomed USA after former US President Donald Trump decided to walk out of American climate change commitments, while Mr. Biden has promised to restart the USA's funding of the Global Green Climate Fund, which Mr. Trump has ended. India still awaits a large part of 1.4 billion commitment by the US to finance solar technology in 2016, which Mr. Trump subsequently slowed down. New president might also consider joining the International Solar Alliance founded by India and France, which the other Quad members are a part of, but US, which has promised to do so in 2016, has resisted. So under new presidentship or new regime in USA, we will see in future that USA will become part of ISA as well. Meanwhile, on Quad working group set up to cooperate on critical technologies, India will welcome any assistance in reducing its dependence on Chinese telecommunication equipment and in finding new sources of rare earth minerals, but would oppose any move by other Quad partners to weigh in on international rulemaking on digital economy or digital localization, which had led New Delhi to work out of Japan-led Osaka Track Declaration at G20 in 2019. So here, uh, 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 what has been discussed, it has discussed regarding Quad working group if they set up to cooperate on critical technology, and India will welcome assistance in reducing its dependence. So if critical technology is being discussed, so India will seek to what? It will seek to reduce its dependency on the Chinese telecommunication, okay, equipment, and they will find new sources of rare earth minerals, so that telecommunication can be resolved, the issue can be resolved. But it would oppose any move by other Quad partners to weigh in on the international rulemaking on the digital economy, okay, because these members are partners now. So if anything would happen, if any opposition would be taken place at the Quad level, then it would be reflected at the um, you can say on the ground level. So data localization, which had led New Delhi to work out of Japan-led Osaka Track Declaration in the G20 of 2019. So it is on the fourth C. If we're discussing that working group is working on three C's, so if it is fourth C, that is China, so where it is still unclear how far India's prime minister or central government can go on the Quad's intended outcomes, and especially on the collaboration which includes in the maritime security to meet challenges to the rule-based maritime order in the East and South China Sea, as the joint statement reads. Okay, so till now nothing has been clear regarding these seats. So while India shares the deep concerns and the tough messaging set out by the Quad on China, especially after the year-long standoff at the line of actual control and the killings at the Galwan that India has faced, it has demurred from any non-bilateral statements on it. India is the only Quad member, not part of military alliance that binds the others, the only Quad country with a land boundary with China, and only Quad country which lives in a neighborhood where China has made deep inroads. Okay, so India is the only country who is stuck in these situations. So Indian officials, they are still engaged in line of actual control disengagement talks that have thus far yielded only a phase one disengagement at Pangong Lake. They have a long way to go to de-escalation or status quo ante. Then violence at the line of actual control has also left three long-term impacts on Indian strategic planning. What are those three impacts? The first, that is about government must now expend more resources. troops infrastructure funds to the LAC than ever before, in order to leave no part of the once peaceful LAC unmanned, and ensures no recurrence of People's Liberation Army April 2020 incursions. So here, violence at LAC that has been demanded to be stopped. Second, India's most potent territorial threat will be from either China or Pakistan. So, but from both, or what the Indian Army Chief Manoj Mukund Narwane called a two-front situation. Then, thirdly, India's continental threat perception will need to be prioritized against any maritime commitments the Quad may claim, especially for the a field in the Pacific Ocean. Okay. So under Modi government, it has been said that it sees the Quad formation as it does it with other multilateral commitments, including Shanghai cooperation. It means there was a threat of China that after becoming a full-time member of Quad, and after Quad revival, what would happen? India would become mere let's say India would not be fruitful, or India would not be helpful for such organizations like SCO, where China is sharing its platform with India, or BRICS Summit, where India and China together, they were working very well and they were more ambitious. So here, what it has been said, Modi government has said that it sees Quad formation as it does it with other multilateral commitments. So here, it has given an assurance that India's presence in Quad is that would be similar, its presence at different organization or different platforms like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or in Central Asia, or BRICS meeting in the emerging economies, and South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, or Bay of Bengal Initiative for sectoral technical and economic cooperation in the neighborhood, etc. So these are those multiple or multilateral platforms, or important multilateral platforms, where India has played a very decisive role. So India has given an assurance that Quad is another multilateral platform like that. So whatever commitments India has given, or India is having in these platform at Quad, so India is going to do or going to give it's going to work on its commitment on these as well. Where have I been? Okay. So in the sense that Quad's ideology of a diamond of democracies can only succeed if it does not insist on exclusivity in India's strategic calculations. So these countries, these are called or regarded as diamond of democracies. So diamond of democracies are what? That is Quad members. So that they can only succeed if it does not insist of exclusivity in India's strategic calculations. It means they can get success in their commitments if they will not put exclusivity on India's strategic calculations. Okay, so those who speak of Robert Kaplan's book Monsoon, which proposed a greater role for the US in the Indian Ocean as the inspiration of America's current Quad strategy, would do well to also read Mr. Kaplan's sequel, that is Revenge of Geography, in which he has made the case that world continues to evolve according to the dictates of physical terrain, frustrating the proponents of human agency. It means there are different factors which determines the relationship at the international platform, which determines the actions of the countries. Okay, so that has been discussed in Mr. Kaplan's book, that is Monsoon and Revenge of Geography, where it has discussed all such factors, and that can be taken over in the Quad strategy. So truth is, despite last week's Quad summit, India's choice for its Quad strategy will continue to be guided as much by its location on land and as it is by its close friendship with fellow democracies, that is US, Japan, and Australia across the seas. Basically, what is the issue? Issue is that, as it has discussed in this article, that India is the only country which is sharing its boundaries with China. Okay, although with China, all such countries are having few problems, okay, regarding its intervention in the territories. But if we see about physical territory, so that India is the only country which China shares borders with. Okay, so in that situation, it becomes very important for India to choose its strategy. Okay, so here it has been said that on this Quad summit, India's choice for its Quad strategy that will continue to be guided by much of its location. It means it needs to keep in mind its location first. Okay, and because tussle between India and China, we have seen in the name of Galwan Valley, in the name of Doklam earlier, in the name of border issue or LAC issue. So here, India need to keep this thing in the mind regarding its location of land, as it is by its close friendships with the fellow democracies. मतलब democracies के साथ जो friendship है उसको भी ध्यान में रखना है, and it has to keep it in mind its border, okay, across the seas. So that is all about this article. I hope it is clear. So here, what is the key takeaway of this article? Key takeaways are many. Here, it has discussed what all discussions had been taken place. Working group has been formed for 3 C's, to work on the 3 C's. That was COVID-19 vaccination, climate change, and critical technology. Fourth C, which has not been discussed, but it has been reflected in their actions and discussions. Okay, that is countering China, or counter challenge, poses counter challenge to China. So here it has been discussed what India should do, what India's strategy for Quad and other platforms and China should be. Okay, so that these are some key takeaways in the article. Now, next is about forestalling a cyber Pearl Harbor. It would be a grievous error if India were to underestimate the extent of the cyber threat it faces, especially from China. So here, this is regarding cyber security. Okay, cyber threats which India is getting, what India should do in that. So whatever Chinese cyber threat India is receiving, India should not underestimate that. Okay, and especially when cyber threat is coming from China. So do not underestimate that. So context is that the threat posed to key Indian entities by antagonistic forces like China is beginning to merit critical attention in all the right quarters. This follows revelations by US-based cybersecurity firm Recorded Future, which were carried by the media in the United States. So according to dispatch by New York Times, in the lead up to the India-China border clashes, Recorded Future has found that an increase in malware attacks targeting the Indian government, defense organizations, and public sector. So as per the new founding of Recorded Future in USA, they have found that when India-China border issues or the border clashes started, at the same time, many malware attacks started targeting Indian government, defense organization, and along with that, public sector too. So also that coinciding with the Chinese incursions in eastern Ladakh, certain Indian power facilities had been targets of a cyber attack. So some power sector has also been, power facilities has also been cyber attacked during Chinese incursions in eastern Ladakh. So furthermore, that there will still more some evidences of ongoing intrusions, though the intensity of activity appear to have ceased by mid-February 2021. So it has been slowed down by mid of February this year. A needless controversy did erupt in the wake of these disclosures as to whether the October 2020 blackout in Mumbai were directly linked to this cyber attack. State authorities in Maharashtra, they attributed that blackout of the to the attack by Chinese cyber group, but authorities in Delhi blamed it on a human error. It means that, as I've said, that malware attack has been increased. Malware attacks has been increased parallelly with the India-China border clash, and when in China's incursion had been seen in the eastern Ladakh. Then in mid-February, it got slowed down. Then whatever cyber blackout had been seen in Mumbai, whether it was a cyber attack. So here, Maharashtra state government, they have said that that was attributed the blackout to the attack by Chinese cyber group. But Delhi's authority, they are claiming or blaming it on the human error, because so they are saying that blackout has been happened because of the human error, not by the malware attack. So far more crucial than merely assigning blame, and what should have been of real concern, is that key infra facilities like power sector were now in the crosshairs of a hostile China, which appeared intent on deploying cyber weapons to target India. So here they are blaming, okay, Delhi government has blamed human error for this. And in such a situation, what is the real concern is, what the real concern is and what should have been the real concern. So that is the key infrastructure facility. So real concern is the infrastructure facilities like power sector. These are now in the crosshair of the hostile China. It means that Chinese threat are these are prone to the Chinese threat. Okay, so Chinese or China's intention evidently is to keep India in thrall while outwardly demonstrating a conciliatory posture, like vacating some of the areas in eastern Ladakh that it had occupied post April 2020. So if these kind of activities they will do, the Chinese will do, then what they will succeed in? They will succeed in the vacating the areas in the eastern Ladakh so that they can claim that area, okay, or they can put their claim over that area. So the reported event are a wake up call for India, and it would be a grievous error if India were to underestimate the extent of the cyber threat posed to by China. Indian government agencies like National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center and the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, that is CERT-IN. So they may have more information on Chinese aggressive cyber campaign. Okay, so these agencies they may have more information on these cyber attacks campaigned by China. But if what recorded future has indicated is true, that is since early 2020 there has been an observation of a large increase in suspected targeted intrusion activity against Indian organizations from Chinese state sponsored groups concentrating on infrastructure targets, including the power sector and ports, then India needs to be on its guard. Okay, so for a recorded future, they have found it that these kind of activities has been increased, or state sponsored groups, Chinese sponsored groups, they are indulged in such activities. So at least 10 Indian distinct power sector organizations they are said to have been targeted, in addition to 2 Indian ports. So along with 2 Indian ports, power sector they are claiming that they had been targeted. What adds whereas multitude to these revelations is that identification of the network infrastructure. What was that? That was axiomatic symptom. Okay, whose servers are known to be used by Red Echo, that is a China linked activity group, which has targeted India's power sector and facilitated the employment of a malware that was known as Showpad. So it has been found that Showpad, which is a malware that has that was uh, 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 what say attacked India's power sector, that has targeted India's power sector. So Showpad, that is a network intrusion malware that is affiliated to both the Chinese Ministry of State Security and People's Liberation Army. Showpad, that is depicted as a backdoor that is called Trojan malware, which creates a secret path for a targeted system to a command and control server to extract information. So Showpad, which is a kind of Trojan malware. Okay, that creates a secret path for the targeted system. So it means it gives a command to the targeted system to control the server and get the extra or get the information. So if indeed the future is digital and China has indeed embarked on an all-out offensive of this nature, India needs to adopt comprehensive measures to forestall a potential cyber Pearl Harbor as far as India is concerned. So India need to work on this. If malware attacks are there, India should not underestimate these attacks. India should work. India should make more stronger to face those attacks and to resolve those attacks. So across the world, Beijing does appear to be engaged in major cyber offensive directed not only against countries like India, but against many advanced nations. Okay, so it is not. The situation is not that cyber threats are only against India, but it is also China has done so against many countries. Many countries are being targeted by them. So in attempting this, what China is doing, that is essentially exploiting to perfection the many vulnerabilities that software companies, essentially those working in the Western countries, have deliberately left open for offensive purpose at an opportune time. It means they try to analyze any opportune time. It means they try to analyze, they try to find out the loopholes in the software, and they always keep on looking for the exact time and exact moment and exact error what can be useful for them. Okay, then only they attack. So exploiting the loophole and also turning matters on its head, it is companies in the Western world that are now at the receiving end of such antiques, having left vulnerabilities for future exploitation. So if such vulnerabilities are being left out, these are being taken up by the China. Chinese cyber espionage sets no limitations on targets towards the end of 2020. And as the world prepared for a large scale deployment of COVID-19 vaccines, their attention was directed to vaccine distribution supply chains around the world. Okay, so here it is saying that their cyber espionage, they have no limitations on the targets. And by the end of 2020, and as the world was preparing for the large scale deployment of COVID-19 vaccinations, what China was doing, China put their attention directly to the vaccine distribution supply chains. Okay, it means it tried to disturb the supply chain, vaccination supply chain of the world. So a global spear phishing campaign targeting organizations responsible for vaccine storage and transportation was reportedly unleashed, and while concrete evidences as to which country are indeed responsible for this is not available, the shadow of suspicion has fallen mainly on Chinese hackers. It means it has been find out, but it was not find out which company is involved in, but suspicion was fallen on Chinese hackers. So their objectives that seem to have been targeting vaccine research, gaining future access to corporate networks, and seeking sensitive information relating to COVID-19 vaccine distribution. So they are targeting vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, its manufacturing, its distribution. Why? Because they want to control it. They have target on the vaccine research. They want to gain future access to corporate networks, and they are seeking sensitive information which is related to COVID-19 vaccine distribution, so that they can disturb these. So very recently in 2021, several thousands of US organizations, these were being hacked in an unusually aggressive Chinese espionage campaign. And these Chinese group, Hafnium, which had been identified as being responsible for this breach, exploited a series of flaws in the Microsoft software, enabling attackers to gain total remote control over affected systems. Each hour of the day, thousands of Microsoft servers were compromised as a result till the breach was discovered. While these Chinese cyber espionage may be the flavor of the month, and what must be recognized is that many countries or other countries, including US and Russia, they do engage in some kind of cyber warfare. And if little has been publicized about Western cyber espionage, and while these may not match that of either China or Russia, it does happen. US, that has extensively publicized Russia's cyber antiques from time to time. Best known are accusation of Russia cyber interfere in USA presidential election 2016, which approached the level of a major scandal. Russia, that is currently the prime suspect, is one of the greatest data breaches that concerning the US federal government, involving Department of Defense, Energy, State, Homeland Security, Treasury, etc. So headlined Solar Winds, the late 2020 breach is a prime example of the damage that can be caused by a cyber attack. So cyber attacks and cyber espionage that can be rewrite or rewritten the history of our times. We are witnessing only the tip of the iceberg at present. It means whatever cyber threats we are seeing, these are few. But like an iceberg, okay, there are many cyber attacks which are hidden yet. Okay, and most nations are truly unaware of the extent to which breaches are taking place. It means if breaches are taking place, we do not get to know what is the level of such breaches. So nations should beware and be warned about how cyber attacks can bring a nation to its knees. This was well demonstrated way back in 2016 when a major attack on Ukraine's power grid took place and set an ominous precedent in this respect. The attacks were carried out by skilled cybersecurity professionals who had planned their assaults over many months, testing the quality of malware, carrying out detailed logistics planning, and conducting a very sophisticated operations. So Ukraine example, that should be a wake-up call for India and the world. And in the intervening 5 years, the sophistication of cyber attacks and the kind of malware available have become more advanced. It means more advanced technology are being used for the attacks. So India could well be blindsided by Chinese cyber attacks on critical infrastructure if India sets out to do so. Sorry, if China sets out to do so, unless prophylactic measures are to be taken in time. It means the appropriate action need to be taken in time to get rid of such malware attacks or cyber threats. So there are no ready-made solution to counter the cyber offensive emanating from different quarters. No nation can hope or can claim to be insulated from such attacks. US seemed to fully wake up to the cyber threat only in 2017 when US security tools were hacked, having preferred for long to indulge in a kind of active defense by seeking to hack enemy networks. US President Joe Biden is now understood to have included a sum of over $10 billion for cybersecurity in his COVID-19 relief bill that is clearly intended to improve US readiness and resilience in the cyberspace. So, while presenting a world view, so from an Indian perspective, Chinese cyber threat could prove to be a truly daunting. What are the reasons? There are many reasons for this. China's analysis of the state of current relation between China and India is that they remain antagonistic in the point of decoupling and confrontation with Chinese President Xi Jinping's community with the shared future for mankind, and India's current posture could lead to a long period of volatility. Okay, so confrontation should not be there between China and India. So as India grows closer to USA, this gap between the two key Asian nations can be expected to become still wider. Under Mr. Xi, China has forged a firm nexus between authoritarianism, global ambitions, and technology, and they are undermined to transform the global order to advance its interest. So here, cyber could well be one of the China's main threat vectors employed directly or employed against countries that do not fall in line with China's worldview. And China's 2021 defense budget that gives special weightage to the strategic support force that embraces cyber warfare. That is an omnibus portent that bodes little good for countries that posit a challenge to China's ambitions, like India. So, drawing up a comprehensive cybersecurity and one that fully acknowledges the extent of the cyber threat from China. So in that case, it becomes an imperative and immediate necessity of the time. Okay. So I hope it is clear. Give me a second. Now, another article, this is also related to Quad Summit, that is about summit spirit. Quad broadens India's interest on its geopolitical horizon further. Give me a second. So, here the context of this article, that is about Quad. That is about Quad has broadened India's interest on its geopolitical horizon. It means Quad has given an edge to India to work on its geopolitical horizon or to widen its geopolitical horizon. So context is that the virtual summit has brought together leaders of Quad Security Dialogue or Quad Group contained both broad substances and deep symbolism. And what are those symbolism and substances? So countering any perception that Quad is merely a talk shop. It means it has been said, it has been criticized to Quad that it is just a talk shop. It means no actions or required actions are taken. It is an Asian NATO group. Okay, so such criticism has been passed to Quad. So here it is saying that countering any perception that Quad is merely a talk shop, the outcomes announced by US President and Prime Minister of India, Japan, and Australia include a vaccine initiative and joint working groups to cooperate on critical technology as well as climate change. It means they have taken up the critical issues of the world which world is facing these days and since years. Okay, so COVID-19 vaccination, this is very, very critical, so that our upcoming generation and the present generation, that can be saved. Critical technology, so that critical technology can be used for the welfare of the coming generations. Okay, and then climate change. World is fighting against climate change, so climate actions are required. So climate change is another matter of the joint working group. So vaccine initiative comes with an ambitious deadline: a billion vaccines by the end of 2022, made in India with US technology, Japanese funding, and Australian distribution networks to reach as many Indo-Pacific countries as possible. Four Quad countries will ensure emissions reduction based on the Paris Accord, as well as cooperate on technology supply chains, 5G networks, and biotechnology. Mr. Biden, who hosted the summit, managed some powerful atmospherics by coordinating a joint statement and a first call, that is Spirit of the Quad, and the joint article by the four leaders that committed to an open Indo-Pacific free from coercion. Okay, so Indo-Pacific. So these are the objectives of Quad, okay, which Quad members has presented. So leaders, they are expected to meet later this year at the G7 summit, and then they will have one-on-one meeting. So Mr. Biden, early push for the Quad engagement is part of his promise that America is back. And this America is back is in the terms of global leadership, which is reaffirming regional alliances and taking on the growing challenges from China. So now together they are strong to counter such or poses such challenges. So for similar reasons, due to maritime tensions with China, trade and telecommunication issues, Australia and Japan are keen on taking the Quad partnership to deeper levels of cooperation. It means every partner of Quad group, they have some tussle between them and China. So for India, new terms of Quad will mean more strategic support after a tense year at LAC, and also a boost for its pharmaceutical prowess, opportunities for technology partnerships, and more avenues for regional cooperation or on development projects and financing infrastructure, especially in South Asia, where China has taken the lead. Okay, so there are many issues. So it would be a mistake if to portray Quad Summit as a throwing down to the gauntlet to China. And new US government is still exploring its own relationship with China. Its first engagement with Beijing's top diplomats is in Alaska. And for Japan and Australia, China remains the biggest trading partner. Relationship that will only grow once 15 nation RCEP kicks in. So for Japan and Australia, China is the biggest trading partner. Okay, if 15 members RCEP would kicks in, or would started functioning, then it will become a biggest trading partner of China, Japan, and Australia. So India, given its own ties with China, sensitivities over ongoing LEC disengagement talks, and its other multilateral commitments at the BRICS and SCO groupings, are displaying caution in the Quad engagement, keeping the conversation focused on what Mr. Modi is calling to make the Quad engagement, or to make the Quad a force for global good, rather than pushing plans for militaristic coalition. So Quad, the what you can say, the vision of the Quad, that for the world, what is that? That is force for a global good. Okay, not to be a militaristic coalition. So in that sense, Quad's new summit avatar has given India yet another string to its bow, and broadening India's interest on its geopolitical horizons even further. Okay, so it has opened its ways for India to widen its horizon on the geopolitical issues. Okay, so that platform has been given by Quad to India. Now, next article, that is about issues related to inflation. So article is salutary reminder: policymakers must focus on maintaining price stability given the volatile food and fuel cost. So inflation is increasing. Okay, and why it is increasing? That is because of increase in the price of food and fuel cost. So context is that with just over 2 weeks left to 31st March deadline for the government and RBI to complete the quinquennial review of the current inflation target under the monetary policy framework, the largest consumer price index reading provides a salutary reminder for policymakers to maintain a ceaseless vigil over price stability. So retail inflation, which has measured by CPI, consumer price inflation, okay, that accelerated to a 3-month high of 5.03% in February. Uh, that is as per the data which has released by National Statistical Office. Okay, jump of almost 100 basis points from 4th January. From January that was 4.06%. So while partly attributable to a base effect, given that price gains has had relatively eased in February 2020, that is a clear signal that food and fuel prices continue to pose a threat to broader price stability in the economy. It means because of increasing food and fuel prices, the inflation would keep on increasing. So that is the threat. Okay. So RBI's early February what's that? Prognostication of continuing pressures in the prices of pulses and edible oils has been borne out by the last 2 months CPI data. So RBI has given its February data on continuing pressure in the prices of pulses and edible oils. So that has been borne out by the last 2 months of CPI data. So inflation of both essential food products that has persisted in the double digits during that period, and in case of the fuel, that has been accelerated disconcertingly to 20.8% in the last month. So both the commodities prices, food and fuel, that has increased, okay, continuously. So price gains with respect to two other key sources of protein, meat and fish and eggs, also remain stuck above 11%. And the deflation in the vegetable cost. What is the meaning of deflation? Dekho, inflation, that is increase in the price of commodity. Deflation, it means there is a base price, and inflation would be the increased price of that base price. It means the increased amount of the base price. Okay. Deflation means what? Deflation means decrease in the price of the commodity. Okay, so here deflation has been seen in the vegetable cost. So, and deflation in the vegetable cost, which had helped offset the generalized pressure in food inflation, and it has also waned considerably in the February to minus 6.7% from minus 15.8% in January. So upshot was that food and beverages are a combined category with a weight of 54.2% in CPI that has witnessed an almost 160 basis points in inflation to 4.25% last month from January's 2.67%. So it has increased because of increase in the prices of pulses, beverages, okay, and fuel. So another equal worrisome source of inflationary pressure, that is continuing upward trajectory in the prices of petroleum products. So in the food, pulses, poultry products, beverages. So the prices of these products has that kept on increasing. Then another trajectory, that is petroleum prices, that also kept on increasing. So transport and communication, which directly reflect these prices, that has seen inflation or saw inflation rocket by more than 200 basis points to 11.4% in February from 9.3% in the preceding month. Diesel, that is the main fuel for the freight carriage, matlab freight, that is railway freight. So this is the main fuel. So it is also hovering around rupees 85 per liter in many parts, and it will most certainly feed into the cost of everything requiring to be transported. So because of increase in the price of diesel, transportation cost of products, that has also been increased. Brent crude oil, that is used for the airlines. So Brent crude oil futures have surged by close to 40% in the 3-month period through March 11. In the wake of output cost by major oil producing nations, another worrying portent for inflation. with the RBI's own researchers having so cogently led out the case for persisting with the current flexible inflation targeting regime of ensuring that price gains stay within 2% to 3%, 6% band in the central bank's first report on currency and finance in 8 years. Policymakers, they must stay laser focused on keeping price stability front and center of their fresh framework for the next quinquennial. So any effort is if being made to dilute the focus in a purported bid to prioritize growth risks putting the economy on a perilous path that may secure neither objective. What is the objective? Objective is to bring down the prices to the target, or you can say inflation targeting. So that is the objective of that is all about this article. Now, next article, this is related to POXO Act. So limits of POXO, a recent judgment highlights the need to reconsider POXO's absolutist approach to adolescent sexuality needs. So here, recent judgment has been taken place, and it has highlighted the need for the reconsideration of the POXO Act, okay, or absolute approach to the adolescent sexuality needs. It means the judgment in the POXO Act in the matter of adolescent, that need to be reconsidered, okay, in terms of sexual choices, in terms of sexual needs. So if such cases would be there, then in that situation reconsideration of POXO Act is required. So context is that a single bench of the Madras High Court recently allowed a petition which is seeking to quash a case of kidnap, aggravated penetrative sexual assault, and aggravated sexual assault of a minor. Aggravated penetrative assault, sexual assault under POXO, that is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012, that is the equivalent provision for aggravated rape. Person that can be charged with this offense in certain aggravating circumstances, like if the rape occurs within a relationship of trust or authority, or if it leads to pregnancy, among others. So it means, what is the meaning of aggravation? So aggravation is that any person who is under the charge of the offense that is related to the aggravated circumstances, if it has been found that he is indulged in a rape in within any relationship, it means within any close relationship of trust or authority. So if that rape leads to pregnancy, among others, then it will be an aggravated circumstance. And under POXO, consent of a person under the age of 18 is irrelevant. It means if we talk about adolescent, it means from 12 to 18 years. So if such kind of situation emerges, if adolescent person, if he gets into he if gets into sexual interaction, so in that case, later on, if rape charges are being imposed on the person, then in this case, what happens? In this case, it has been judgment has been passed that under the age of 18, whatever sexual interaction would be there, that will be considered as irrelevant, okay, regardless of the nature and circumstances of the sexual interaction or the particulars of the persons with whom it takes place. That means that any sex with a minor is a rape. It means under the age of 18, if any sexual interaction occurs, and then what would be the case? The case would be of rape. Okay, it means no sexual need of adolescent person would be considered, has been considered in this. So judgment echoes the arguments that child right activists that have been making for years. By ignoring the natural sexual tendencies of adolescents, POXO can and does become a tool for the persecution of young people in consenting sexual relations. If it means that if any person comes in the sexual contact with the person of adolescent age, then that act would be considered as a rape, and in that scenario it will be a criminal offense under POXO Act. So here it has said that natural sexual tendencies of adolescents has been ignored in this. So court reasoned that adolescence and young adulthood from a continuum because of the physical, biological, neurological, and social changes that occur during this time. And that is why such tendencies occurs. Okay. So implications is that people within this age group may be clubbed together, notwithstanding the legal line drawn at 18. So here court has said that these people, the adolescent people, they go through physical, biological, neurological, and social changes. It means social surrounding changes. How? If any girl, if she enters into puberty, then you can see the behavior of that girl changes. The mingleness of that girl, that changes. So these are social changes. People start behaving. The behavioral changes can be seen with the girl child. Okay, so these are social changes, so that need to get adopted. Then neurological changes, it means the change in the mindset that also comes in. Biological changes occurs in the body of children. Okay, physical changes, it means the need or the desires of the children, that also gets changed during that age. So court has reasoned regarding adolescent or young adulthood. So implication of these feelings is that people within this group age, they may be clubbed together, notwithstanding the legal line drawn up at the 18. So every adolescent, if such line would not be drawn, then any cases may appear like that. So this informed the court's view of the relationship of the minor victim with the accused respondent as being a loving rather than an abusive one. So judgment concluded that case could be quashed because it was purely individual in nature, and doing so would not affect any overriding public interest. In doing that, if it ignored an established precedent against question cases of rapes, a heinous and serious offense held by Supreme Court to be a public concern and not a private matter. If such things happens, rape happens, um, uh, that is a criminal offense. So in that case, it does not become a private matter. It converts as a public concern. So perhaps the court was persuaded in taking this course because of its observation that POCSO could not have been intended to bring such cases within its scope. And in the making this observation, court relied on statement of objects and reasons of POCSO, which states that the law has enacted pursuant to Article 15 of the Constitution, which allows the state to make special provisions for the women and children, and UN Convention on the Rights of Child to protect children from sexual assault, sexual harassment, and pornography. Okay, so in that, so court has relied on the statements of objects of the reasons of POCSO, in which it has stated that any law which has been made under the under the ambit of Article 15, which allows to have special provisions, to make special provisions by the government for women and children. Okay, so that is constitutional provision. So special provisions can be made for women and children, and UN Convention on the Rights of Children, which is also talking about protection of children against sexual harassment, sexual assault, and pornography. So that had been considered in the Supreme Court statement. So now in that situation, what is the meaning of POCSO? Neither the founding documents nor the listed categories of offences give a sense of what the limits of POCSO were meant to be. Parliamentary Committee of Rajya Sabha, they have considered POCSO Bill 2011, and they criticize the clause that provides for the possibility of consent in cases of sexual intercourse with minors between the age of 16 and 18. So this committee, they have criticized the situation when any sexual contacts establishes uh, uh, with the children between the age of 16 to 18. So they criticized that there might be consent of those children. Okay, so it has been criticized by the parliamentary committee. So it believed that uniform age of 18 would ensure that trials of child rape would focus on the conduct of the accused and the circumstances of the offense, instead of putting victims on trials, as is often the case when the consent of the victim is in question. Like, what happens if victim is under age of 18? Then its mind or the thought process is not developed. Okay, So that should keep it in mind. If that minor that comes in or that faces any sexual attempt or what's a rape attempt, so court examines after filing a case, court examines, proceedings goes on. So in the questions which has been asked in the during the examination, which has been asked during the hearings, then it may impact the minds of the children. Okay, that is why this line has been drawn for the that is that is the uniform age of 18. So this would indicate that adolescent sexuality was not meant to be an exception to the POCSO's bright line approach. 5 state studies on the functioning of special courts under POCSO Act, conducted by the Center for Child and Law and National Law School of Indian University, Bangalore, they have demonstrated that these de facto consensual cases are complicated. So adolescents can and do choose to have sex. It is a fact that they are still children and their nascent sexual autonomy is susceptible to abuse. This see here what it is saying. Even if they give consent, the children between the age of 16 or during their adolescent age, if they give the consent, then their consent can be misused. Okay, that can be misused. That can become more complicated. So adolescents can can and do choose to have sex. It is a fact that they are still children and their nascent sexual autonomy is susceptible to abuse. So that can be converted into abuse, child abuse. Okay. So this contradiction created by the very nature of adolescence has led to inconsistent and unprincipled adjudication. Absolute age line of POCSO has not prevented the insensitive assessment of minors' consent. At the same time, it has forced courts to choose between applying the law, doing justice, especially in the cases where minor victims are willingly eloped with or married the accused or is carrying his child, or imprisoning him would only do her harm. It means during adolescent age, girls, if they decides to marry that person who has raped her, okay, raped in the sense um, uh, that according to POCSO Act, the sexual interaction under the age of 18, that would be considered as a rape. You know, that is there. So in that case, why this article is talking about the consent, why it is talking about the will of adolescent children, because in that scenario, if girl marries that person who has attempted a sexual who has attempted sexually to her, if she marries, she gets a child, she carries her child, she lives her life with him, and in that case, if this scenario is being tried under POCSO Act, then that person 100% would go to the jail. Okay, then in that situation, what would happen to that girl? Okay, so that need to be considered in the POCSO Act, because as Supreme Court has said that these people, the adolescent people, they go through so many changes. From biological to social changes. So in that situation, it becomes very difficult to understand their thoughts basically. So imprisonment to that person may harm the future of that girl as well. Okay, so this becomes critical. So judgment that was intuitively just, even though it was not in line with the precedent. The highlighted the urgent need for a reconsideration of the absolutist approach of POCSO when it comes to the sexual interaction of adolescents with other young people. Okay, in that case, reconsideration is required. Courts need to be able to strike a balance between the limited but developing capacity of adolescents to consent to sexual interaction and their vulnerability to being groomed, abused, and exploited. For this to be possible, legislature must provide clarity on the core wrongs that POCSO is meant to address, so that valid conclusions may be drawn about what is the intent of the law and what is clearly outside its purpose. So here purpose is required to be outlined so that intention of the law can be um, uh, well defined. Okay, so that is there about this article. Now, next article, this is about population stabilization. India's demographic dividend is in the favor. Okay, it means India's population component is more over depends on the young population in the coming years, as compared to Japan, as compared to China. India's population or demographic dividend would be would what's say would have young population. Okay, and young population means that it would be favorable for the economy of the country. That is the meaning of uh, demographic dividend. So here India needs for a population stabilization. It means population is increasing, and with the increasing of population, the age of population is also increasing. So how population stabilization is required, and why? So national population policy 2000 affirmed a commitment to achieve replacement levels of fertility, that is total fertility rate of 2.1 by 2010. 10 states, that is Karnataka, Punjab, Gujarat, Assam, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, and Jammu and Kashmir, they have achieved that goal. It means they have minimized their total fertility rate. It has controlled the population outburst, albeit much delayed, but it was delayed, but they achieved. Kerala and Tamil Nadu, they accomplished its decades earlier. Fertility decline over half of India has cut across all sections of society, the privileged and the poor, those educated or not, and high or low caste. Okay. So it has affected in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So reduced TFR, that is total fertility rate. National Family Health Survey has shown how total fertility rate has reduced even among illiterate women from all religions in the southern states. Okay, even in Kerala and Telangana, which have a high proportion of Muslims, but still they try to control or minimize the population or by reducing the total fertility rate. Question that arises is how could the southern states achieve population stabilization so early, and several others could follow suit while UP and Bihar continue to drift. It means total fertility rate is on still on increasing in UP and Bihar. So when fertility reduction in the 5 southern states succeeded, irrespective of literacy and education levels, and could permeate all sections, it overturns the conventional wisdom that literacy, education, and development are prerequisites for populations to stabilize. Simple explanation is that fertility decline was achieved because southern government proactively urged families to have only 2 children, followed by female sterilization immediately thereafter. It means after having 2 kids, female sterilization takes place. So that helps to curb the population outburst. Almost the entire state apparatus was marshaled to achieve this objective. Difference between the progressive south and slowpoke central north is becoming disproportionately skewed. UP and Bihar are 23% of India's population, and they are projected to grow by over 12% and 20% in the next 15 years. It means their population is still increasing. Their high TFR pervades all religious groups, despite the avowment that high fertility prevails disproportionately only among Muslims. It is not like that. All the religion, they are involved in the increasing population. So for action to prevent unwanted pregnancies, particularly in these 2 Hindi belt states, is urgently required. So unwanted pregnancy need to be curbed. What has been done in the southern states, Kerala and Karnataka, where female sterilization takes place after having 2 children. So for decades, UP has had a dedicated agency like that is called SIFSPA, that is State Innovations in Family Planning Services Agencies. But its website gives dated information in contrast to its stellar COVID dashboard, that demonstrating that communication and technical difficulties are overcome once a subject gains priority. Women in rural UP are still giving birth to 4 or more children. In some districts, contraceptive prevalence rate is less than 10%. In many districts, neither Hindus nor Muslims use modern family planning methods. In such a scenario, demographics will eclipse economic growth and destroy the gains from a young populace. Demographic dividend, why it is saying it is favorable? Because young population, it is full of young population. So if population would rise, young population start young population will start declining, and this demographic dividend will become negative for India. It means economic burden would increase on India. It would not be favorable for India's growth. So in such a scenario, demographics will eclipse economic growth, and it will destroy the gains from the young populace. UP's over reliance on traditional methods of contraception needs to be swiftly replaced with reliable and easy alternatives. Bihar has highest fertility rate in the country, and also highest out migration as well. Almost half the women in some districts have a migrant husband, and empirical evidence shows women's unwillingness to seek contraception in the absence of the husband, resulting in unprotected sex when he returns. Okay, so that is because out migration is there. When husband returns, then unprotected sex takes place. Without contraception, sex takes place, and because of that, population increase are being seen. While national and state policies emphasizes male vasectomy, politicians never champion its adoption. It means political actions are required in that, but still it has not been done. No other country in the world uses female sterilization as excessively as India. So in India, female sterilization is on very high. After 2014 Bilaspur outrage, when more than 4 score sterilization were conducted on the less than 6 hours and several women died, one expected that states would go slow on compulsory female sterilization. But surprisingly, even Kerala, with all its progress, still relies on female sterilization, that is above 88%. Instances are being taken place in Kerala regarding female sterilization. And India is the only country where large number of female sterilization takes place. So, as the predominant modern method of contraception, against these methods, the modern methods of contraception, female sterilization takes place. Why this is there? Because of public behavior. Because of public behavior, what happens? People, they do not use contraception, then government needs to come into the picture, and they have made it compulsory to go for sterilization after having kids, 2 kids. So yeah, Indonesia and Bangladesh introduced injectables right from the late 1980s, but India only did so in 2016. And executed properly, one jab renders protection from pregnancy for 3 months. This method needs greater impetus given the helplessness of women who carry the burden of unwanted pregnancies. So 3 things are required: incentivize later marriages and childbirths, make contraception easy for women, and promote women's labor force participation. It means to control population. 3 things are required. What are those? First is late marriages. So late marriages need to be promoted, and that promotion can be taken place if it will be incentivized. It means people who are opting to go for late marriages, they should be given incentives. So then only what happened, people would prefer late marriages, and late marriages that will prevent number of children. Second is make contraception easier for women. So female contraception would be make easier, and to use contraception, it is very important to have public, public behavior need to be changed. People need to learn what is the importance of contraception. So before going for this adoption of the contraception, what is required? That is behavior change of the people towards the usage of contraception. Third, promotion of women's labor force participation. So if women will be women's labor force participation would be promoted, then it will help to reduce population. Why? Because female would be involved in the economy. Okay, they would be involved in the working, they would be part of the economy, working economy. Then population increase can be curbed. Population momentum, if managed properly in Hindi belt, then it will remain India's biggest asset until 2055. By 2040, India will be undisputed king of human capital if it will not be curbed. But alongside some other disturbing nationwide trends must also be counteracted without delay, because stabilization isn't only about controlling population growth, but a balanced sex ratio is very essential to secure social cohesion. Son preference, falling sex ratios, and an abhorrence towards be getting a second or third female child are negative developments that have penetrated even into the rural areas. The inheritance law favoring women's rights to ancestral property is far from being implemented. It means people, they are not aware of the female inheritance right. So till now they wait to have a son, they prefer to have a son, and if two or more girl child they get, then it is what is the implication of this? Implication is the increasing of population, and because of preference of son because of inheritance of property. So people are not aware of female inheritance of property rights, okay, in the rural areas. So decades of policing doctors and sonography machines have failed to be a result. India is facing a demographic catastrophe because it's nearly 4 decade long one child policy resulted in a strong son preference and large family size. So India will never stuck. So government need to understand the crux of the situation, and accordingly government needs to work upon. So here girl friendly schemes needs to be implemented by the government. Then there is another problem regarding population stabilization, that is aging, the aging problem. So paradoxically, in the southern states that will face problems in the future, having largely redeemed their demographic dividend, the cohort of the elderly will start outstripping the working age population. And theoretical possibility that younger people and the central northern states may fill the growing gap in services will need strong political support. So, with the Marathi Mano syndrome rapidly spreading to many other states, such prospects appear to be increasingly uncertain. Freeze of the state-wise allocation of seats in parliament until 2026 was extended through the constitutional 84th Amendment Act 2002 that serves as a motivational measure to pursue population stabilization as a goal which has not been achieved yet. And in the absence of further extension, it will be politically destabilizing. Then India's demography, if we say, that is likely a 3D or three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. And whether one starts fitting pieces at the center of the puzzle or the corners, greater persistence is needed to complete the picture of a developed India. So here, policy intervention is required by the government. Proper policy framework is required by the government, so that and public campaigning and public behavior needs to be changed. Okay, towards contraception, towards the use of contraception, towards the importance of contraception, and people should be aware what are the importance to bring down or the lower down the population. So such instances are required to take action by the government in this, and changing the people behavior towards population stabilization. Now, next article, this is about economic relationship. So a robust economic relationship from any industry perspective, US India collaboration in certain areas will bring many gains. So as India and USA, they are writing another what's a good chapter on their relationship. So here this article is discussing why India and USA needs to be collaborate on its economy. It means their collaboration can help economy of India as well as USA. So what are those areas? So we'll discuss about that. So what is the context? Context is that under the new USA administration, economic relationship with India can be expected to be one of the radar, as India has enjoyed bipartisan support in USA. Closer economic partnership would bring India's or would bring gains to both sides in terms of their GDP, in terms of improvement in the employment and productivity, and it will give complementary natures of their economies. From industry perspective, a robust collaborative agenda would rest on the comprehensive sets of actions that will take bilateral trade in goods and services to a desired goal of $500 billion. So if we assume the same rate of growth, the $500 billion target will be achieved by 2036. Okay, and to ensure this, CAGR would need to be set at 11.9%. This target, that is what? That is doable if right policy action are taken. And so some area of collaboration has been outlined. And what are those area of collaboration between India and USA? So first is cooperation on the health standard. Okay, so in this collaboration, the first is cooperation on the health standards. So first one, a collaborative response to the pandemic would contribute to the global containment of the virus. Business partnerships are already taking place in the supply chain to ensure coordinated shipping, distribution, and last mile connectivity. India become the hub of global vaccine distribution, building confidence in the Indian IPR regime, intellectual property right regime, reviving US-India health dialogue, and mutually recognizing standards and approvals will help drive healthcare exchanges. So these exchanges can help India to improve its healthcare standards. Okay. Next collaboration. So as India has become a world hub for vaccine distribution, it means it will also help USA in the curbing of COVID-19 infection. Okay, so next is about strengthening micro trade architecture. So here, improvement in the economic or trade relationship between USA and India. So secondly, macro trade architecture that can be strengthened with a broad trade agreement that is focusing on resolving the low hanging fruit. US India Trade Policy Forum meetings can be revived along the cross sector track to group to look at convergence on the issues like market access. Then there is potential for flexibility from both the sides for restoring the generalized system of preferences, which would help lower duties for certain Indian products. It means if trade relationship can be established, then lower duty goods can be entered in India. Then cross sector, what's say US India Trade Policy Forum meetings can be revived, and along with the cross sector track record group that will look towards convergence of issues like market access. So market access would be given to the goods of US and India. So there is potential for flexibility from both the sides on restoring the generalized system of preferences that will help lower duties, that will help lower duties for certain certain Indian products. Secondly, these two countries should consider initiating discussions on the free trade agreement as well. So that was second collaboration in the economy term. Then trade in services. They should improve trade in services. So the mobility of professional labor would aid trade in services. So mobility of professional laborers can be taken place. It means the H1 visa regime that has been implemented by USA under Trump era, that should be modified, that should be simplified, so that mobilization of experts, mobilization of expert laborers can be taken place. So recent regulations in USA have impacted labor mobility, which can be addressed through immigration reforms for employment-based visa backlogs and smooth and timely processes. MOU on labor cooperation, which has been signed in 2011, could be updated in line with India's recent labor regulatory changes. That may be a good time to reconsider totalization agreement that pertains to social security, and given that both have already entered into such agreements with many of the same partner countries. So that another collaboration in terms of labor, or in terms of trade and services. Third is the technological cooperation. So defense ministries, the defense industry, the ties can be defense industry ties can be stepped up in coordination with industry, as both sides benefit from US technology and Indian manufacturing in this sector. Defense dialogue, including private sectors of both the sides, could help in co-production and co-development in the defense and aerospace sectors. Third is about MSME engagement. So this engagement of small and medium enterprises that can be stepped up. So smaller US companies can find significant new opportunities for investments in India, that and sourcing from India. And US India SME, Small and Medium Enterprises CEO Forum can be set up to catalyze such partnerships. So here, small and medium enterprises can be fund in. Okay, funding can be provided to them. Their promotion can be taken place. So in this field as well, collaboration can be established. Then cooperation on climate change. So the clean energy and climate change, high priorities of US administration, are also areas where India has made rapid strides. US India strategic energy partnership should be geared towards this, towards joint investments in industrial decarbonization, carbon dioxide removal, and green hydrogen. Then program of partnership of advanced clean energy research, partnership of advanced clean energy deployment, and promoting energy access through clean energy must be relaunched. Then next is digital economy partnership. In this, digital economy becomes critical, and India has proved its mettle in this space as well, with some new opportunities like opening up in the robotics, opening up in the artificial intelligence and electric vehicles. So this collaboration can help both the countries together. So it is also important to disseminate information on India's IPR regime improvements and work towards taking India off the US Trade Representative IPR priority watch list. Other opportunities in the bilateral economic relationship that includes education, innovation and R&D, and agricultural trade and technology. So industry is confident that relevant dialogue mechanisms will be instituted at the earliest. So these are some collaborative areas where cooperation between these countries can be taken place, and this economic cooperation and various cooperations will help India and USA to strengthen their relationship in future. Okay, so that was all about this article. Now, next article, this is about democracy index. So pulling India's democracy back from the brink. Suggestions that its democratic credentials have been tarnished merit a serious, thoughtful, and respectful response. We know that Freedom House has published its report in which India's democracy has been shown decline. Okay. So what does that mean? So we'll discuss about that. So context is here: the governments, like citizens that live under their influence, they come in a dizzying array of types, challenging simplistic efforts of classification. In spite of all this variation, what remains constant is this: throughout history, governments wield considerably more power over the governed than the other way around. Vast majority of governments that have ever existed have enjoyed essentially unfettered power over their subjects. That has historically what has happened. Government, whether under monarchy, absolute anarchy. So what happens? Uh, Absolute control on people, that takes place. Some rulers, they have been more enlightened and benign than the others, and some grasp the insight that ruling is easier when one's right to do so is viewed as the legitimate than simply through coercion. But even such philosopher kings that were not above the exercise of arbitrary power when necessary. And these were the exceptions. Most elsewhere power was maintained, and that was known by its iron fist. So here context has given regarding the governing structure of the history. Okay, how it used to be. So absolute control people try to establish on the people. In fact, regime under philosopher kings. So that has also been questioned whether they philosopher king. What is the meaning of philosopher king? Philosopher king, it means that king which is having all such. This philosopher king concept has been given by Plato. So that is an ideal person. This ideal person is full of all such philosophical tendencies, full of all such philosophical knowledge that is required to run a country, that is required to run to rule people. Okay, and under this rule, what would happen? People will get all such facilities, they will get all such amenities in the under the rule of philosopher king. Okay, so that was the concept. So here this so here the context has given regarding the earlier rules or the governing structure. What was the shape of the governing structure that used to be? So balance of power, if we talk about, so human progress has made this description of state society relations sound quite anachronistic. And even though fundamental alterations in the balance of power between governors and the governed are the happenings of contemporary history. First institutional check on sovereign power, that was establishment of the English Parliament in the British historians' terms, Glorious Revolution. So during Glorious Revolution, what happened? Glory that came with the establishment of Parliament in the Britain, okay, in UK. So tired of unending wars that it was asked to fund through people and treasure, and emboldened nobility asserted its right to be consulted by the monarch in matters of war and purse. But for the non-lords of British Isles, precious little changed. That was late 1600, and while the French and American revolutions of a century later that spawned political theory of the highest order, that proclaimed inalienable freedom of all men created equal. And truth is that era of colonialism and continued exclusion of women, along with racial and religious minorities, that meant it was not until the mid 1950s that the revolution only dreamt about millennia before became reality. So that was the governing structure during earlier time. No parliament was there. It means no people rule was there. Revolution took place so that people can get their rights back. Okay, against colonialism, against the anarchy structure of the government. World was lacking in giving rights to women. World was lacking in giving freedom to men or equality. Okay, religious minority racialism that was propounding. So leaders, they expected to return periodically to face the judgments of the governed through universal suffrage elections. They fought for this, whether in UK or in India or in or at other places. People literally, when they got to know, when they realized their rights, then they started fighting for other people's rights. So they fought for this. They fought for through they fought so that they can govern through universal adult suffrage election. Their power in office was constrained by a constitution whose guardian was an independent judiciary, and whose actions were scrutinized and made public by an empowered press charged with the sacred responsibility to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless. It means, who are the powerless? Powerless are the people who should be given suffrage, adult suffrage, so that they can choose their own representative, who they want to see in the office, who they want to rule them. Okay, they want constitution, and the guardian of constitution should be an independent judiciary who would be non-biased to the people. So every constitutional norm would be applicable for all the people under the guardianship of independent judiciary. So in the head days that followed Second World War, with colonial rule beating the retreat, spirit of national self-determination heralded the proliferation of newly independent countries around the world. Biological battleground of Cold War forced that these states to choose between democracy and sine qua non of which was competitive election and its many alternatives, the latter often justified by the fig leaf of communist ideology. Few decades later, collapse of Soviet Union and the start of unipolar American era that led many erstwhile dictatorships to announce elections. And infamously, it was stated under commentator that it was the end of history and liberal democracy that has won the day. Okay, so what should be the pillar of governance in the democracy? The democratic triumphalist, they failed to anticipate was that elections, while vital to the exercise of democracy, are just one leg of the governance tool. Others equally necessary for the system to hold steady, and that are the strength and independence of the other public institutions of the state, whose fealty was the constitution rather than an elected government, and vibrancy and vitality of the press, who served as the people's representatives. So they got the right of asking questions. They bent on uncovering truths, and that made powerful squirm, and they leveled the playing field for citizens charged with rendering judgment on incumbents at the next election. So electoral autocrat, as academic observers labeled them, understood this architecture all too well and initiated a sustained, often violent assault on these institutions. So in the playbook and refined by Russia under Vladimir Putin, Hungary, then Turkey, incompetently they attempted by Donald Trump, that is under US, that is democracy. Okay, so here what democracy is saying. So that was a discussion on the democracy which has been changed or the democratic rules, which has been changed from history to modern age. So a democracy index, if we talk about, so that is against this background, that the kerfuffle about Western academic institutions that generate and publish annual indices of democracy around the world must be understood. Freedom House, that is based out of Washington, D.C., and Varieties of Democracy Project, that is based in Gothenburg, Sweden. So these are two agencies of more regarded efforts that has made to conceptualize and measure the state of democracy globally each year. Their methodologies to read democracy and indicators are transparently public, and data sets they provide are widely analyzed by researchers worldwide. So, like most academic work, their efforts are destined to be ignored by most. But the announcement last month that both indices had independently decided to downgrade India's democratic ratings has set off a firestorm of indignant protest by many who view it as a frontal assault on the current government. India's External Affairs Minister dismissed these ratings as irrelevant certificates issued by self appointed arbiters in the West for which India has little use. Fair enough, though a cynic might point out that the government is all too glad to trumpet positive recognition by Western organizations that laud India's improving investment environment, for instance. It means India has denied the rating of Freedom House. Okay, it has said that it has been given by those agencies for whom India is nothing. There is no use of India. So that is why they have tried to tarnish the image of India's democracy. So both Freedom House and VDEM utilize explicitly dimensional schema that combine many different indicators using in VDEM's case, particularly quite sophisticated statistical techniques. So VDEM used statistical techniques for the publish of its data on democracy. So their methods have been repeatedly peer reviewed, validated by thousands of studies that establish a very high degree of correlation with other academic efforts to measure democracy. Their key facet is a conception of democracy that is holistic and that gives considerable weight to the freedom of press and the independence of judicial branch. Concerns about the undermining of these institutional checks and balances on the power of the Indian state led both institutions to reduce India's score on their index. Such concerns are limited to India as a web search for the phrase domestic backsliding that will reveal. Democracy has been in retreat globally for a while. So, if I talk about India's performance, is India less free than it was a decade ago? So, maybe or may not be, it may happen. But disingenuous to pretend that the mere perception that it might be so does not have negative consequences for the country's ambitions to be fully paid up member of the Quad, or you can say D10. That is a moniker for a group of 10 leading democracies. So both of which Western clubs require a certificate attesting an applicant's democratic credentials for admission. So here it has been criticizing the efforts, criticizing the methods of both the agencies which has published democratic index. So one need not agree with the scoring to recognize its import. To do otherwise is to crib about whether the setting or grading of an examination was fair, as if this could alter an adverse university admission decided it caused at a certain point. It is besides that point. That has been published by these two agencies regarding its declining or declined democratic democracy of India. So damage control measures that is required. So, how India reverse the damage caused? Firstly, government must resist peevish responses. How? International audiences, which is increasingly savvy to misinformation that sees through copy paste Twitter campaigns. It means whatever campaigns that goes regarding democratic or regarding the democracy or democratic norms of the country. So these agencies, they have just copied and pasted those responses on Twitter or those campaigning on Twitter of pliant celebrities and pro government bots. It means the tussle between pro-government bots and the celebrities, okay, blind celebrities. So those campaigning on Twitter, that has just been copied and pasted, and on that basis, this index has been published. Then India's democratic credentials are intrinsic to its identity and its greatest source of legitimacy internationally. Suggestions that these credentials have been tarnished merit a serious, thoughtful, and respectful response, rather than a clever quip that plays to one's preferred gallery but does nothing to assuage one's critiques. Secondly, court and press must own up to their part in this debacle. It means court and press, they need to come into it. They need to come into the picture so that they can take their own part. Yeah. So institutional independence, that is a hard-won resource to be to be husbanded and invested wisely by their custodians. Uh, if they will do so, that will strengthen them and government with whom they serve the people. Thirdly, strong democracy requires a strong opposition. As so, these are damage control measures. Firstly, it should be analyzed. Okay, what is going on if it is copied or pasted? So such campaigns need to be controlled. Okay, on Twitter. Secondly, if something is happening, some report or some indexes are tarnishing the image of Indian democracy, then the role of judiciary, that becomes important. Thirdly, strong democracy requires a strong opposition. As much as it does an incumbent secured enough to face criticism without getting defensive. So here, if opposition would be there, then what would happen? A question on democracy, a check and balance on democracy, that would also always been set up. Okay. Without an opposition to provide voters a viable alternative, the most powerful checks on power devised by human society, that is elections, will lose its power. And with that, democracy also loses. For almost 75 years, India's democratic exceptionalism in the developing world has been a source of genuine pride for its citizens, and that made it a beacon for others seeking to learn from its enviable record of holding free and fair elections at all levels of society. So here, concerns are caused by increasing attacks on the press and the erosion of judicial autonomy that undermine the image, and that is the reality, not the publishing of an academic any academic index to which government and nation must respond. Okay, so here reality check is required regarding the publishing of any such indexes. And if such report is against the India's democratic structure or against the India's what's say democratic presence or its appearance, then proper check and balance is required to put on such agencies. So these are few of the important articles which I discussed in this session. I hope these are helpful for you. I'll discuss other important articles in the next session on Sunday. So thank you so much. Have a nice Sunday. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.